Hello and welcome back, everyone, here today on the Adam Hazara Show from the studio of my own bedroom here in Burke, Virginia, here on a Monday, May 12th, 2025. We have a lot to talk about yet again here today on the Adam Hazara Show. Lake Braddock baseball and Lake Braddock softball wrapped up their regular seasons last week. We'll recap that final week of a regular season. And we'll also be previewing the Patriot District Tournament on both sides that is going to be coming up. Lake Braddock baseball at home on Thursday. Lake Braddock softball at home next Tuesday, May 20th. For Patriot District semifinals as they get a double bye. We're going to be kind of breaking down the outlook of those tournaments. And we will see what is going on. Thank you so much, Will Reactions. Of course, I signed off for a final time over at Lake Braddock Secondary School on the Morning Brew today. So I have one more show as the sports reporter over there, of course, and we will see what the future brings. So thank you so much, everyone, again for tuning in. Before we start, of course, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave a like. Go Bruins, sure thing. Hit that share button so you can get this show out to a friend, like always. And be sure to turn on notifications so you do not miss another episode here of the Adam Hazara Show. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode of the show. We're going to start off again with Lake Braddock baseball, just like always. Of course, we are going to start with recapping kind of that final week. So, of course, going into this final week of the Lake Braddock baseball regular season, you knew that tensions were high in his team. And when I mean tensions, I meant tensions were high in the sense that they needed to get some big wins. They were coming off that 4-game skit where, of course, they had lost a few in a row. You don't see it often from Lake Braddock. They don't really go on a lot of big losing streaks. The 4-game losing streak is their longest in probably about a decade or so, I would say. So that's very emphatic for me to be saying. And that just goes to show you how much adversity this Bruins team has gone through. That 4-game losing streak brought them back down to 500. And you were questioning whether or not this was going to be the season, and it's still kind of up in the air if the Bruins are actually going to finish under or at 500 for the first time in 30-plus years, because they still got some postseason games coming up. At least we know of two, since they have guaranteed themselves a regional berth, since they are getting a first-round bye for the Patriot District Tournament, which of course we'll get into here in a few minutes. But you knew coming into this week that they need to get some wins. So they start off the week, of course, with the game versus, I believe it was, I forgot who played that final game. I believe it was West Potomac who they played. In that last game, of course, it was West Potomac, the first game that week. That game got postponed 2 days because of rain. They played that game on Wednesday. And so that was the signature win that the Bruins needed. That was a huge win. And you're looking, thank you so much again, Will. You were looking at that again to be a game where you need to get a big win. And a guy in the mound this game, Leo DeLomo, who I never said he was bad. His stuff is good. So let me just get that out there. I've never really said that Leo DeLomo's ever been a terrible pitcher. Yes, he's had a lot of struggles this year. I have said that. But you were wondering when he was going to break out after all of his struggles of having an ERA near 8 coming into that game. And finally, he had the outing you're looking for. I believe he pitched 6 innings of 1-run ball versus one of the better teams in the district. And the pitching has not been the problem for the Bruins, especially here in the second half and all of this year. It's more so with the offense being inconsistent. The offense, actually, that game, I believe, scored none of their runs in the earned way. They were all on errors or mishaps by the Wolverines. But what really saved them was the pitching. What has kept them in so many games this year has been the pitching. DeLomo finally fired an outing, and, the Bruins expected him to step up this year as a senior arm who's going to deliver him big games, big outings, and get him a lot of wins. Took him a while, but he finally was able to do that. Snapped a 4-game losing streak, one of the longer losing streak you'll ever see from that team. And then Jack Cavalario, of course, continued to do well that game. Yeah, he did he did get the blown save there. I believe it was an unearned run. But yeah, he still was able to slam the door in extra innings. Bruins scored the third run that game on an error. So they got the go-ahead win. Following night, it was senior night versus Fairfax team. That this game was a game to determine the, I believe, 3 and 4 seeds. Bruins, if they win that game, they would have gotten the 3 seed. Fairfax, I believe, has a 3 seed because they beat Lake Braddock. Lake Braddock is now the 4 seed in the playoffs. So this game, they didn't hit. It was senior night, so unfortunate loss there. Do want to thank everyone, though. Of course, thank you so much for Lake Braddock for honoring me before the game on the field with me, my dad, and all the other players and people who were there. Really nice moment. Thank you so much again to the Lake Braddock parents as well for all the gifts. You guys did a great job, and I can't thank you guys so much for these 4 years. Just want to point out real quick, but that game versus Fairfax, you were hoping that they get a big good win on senior night. Bruins were thrown out for ace Bo Padgett on a mound. Skittles is back. Thank you so much. And so Bo Padgett was back on a mound. He threw some good innings. I believe he only gave up 1 earned run that game. So he did really well again. It was more so just the offense was kind of absent that game. Henry, not Henry Mons, but Ryan Harding, Oliver Crandall, a couple of their outfielders were out. Of course, Harding has been missing some games here in the second half. I know he's dealt with a bad back. I know he's missed the last couple of games. I don't know if he's still injured, if that back bothering him. So another injury. Hopefully he's okay. Hopefully he'll be back for his postseason. And then you kind of, and again with this Fairfax game, you kind of start to get concerned more so maybe about the offense after being shut out. They got shut out again for a second straight game at home. And let me tell you something, that game, you saw, as of the second half, you saw a lot of Lake Braddock hitters, especially the main ones. They've had some injuries this year. Bruins have been more plagued by the injury bug this year. Matt Mayer's out. Riley DeHay's out. Two big players. Ryan Harding has missed some games, as we've mentioned. So, that's, some things. But, they're healthy players, the players who have been productive this year. A few of them were going through bad stretches at the worst time possible when they needed big wins. We mentioned, I believe, Evan George and Matt Shave, they were in big slumps. Now, Matt Shave had a big... Do you think Jamie's would hit 2 bombs in a game? Yeah, Jamie will probably do that easily. He's going to get better at William & Mary. I could definitely see that happening. Yeah, certainly that Skittles comment foreshadows another aspect Matt Shave's game we'll talk about. We'll talk about a Westfield game on Saturday. That's coming up in just a couple minutes here. Of course, before that Westfield game was foreshadowing, he was struggling a bit. Of course, mentioned Evan George was struggling. Dom Quadros was in a slump as well. And so, so those are some big names in the Bruins lineup, and, they again went through slumps at the worst time and may have been contributing. Again, I think they've been, struggling with the lack of a top end back this year. Like, again, Skittles mentioned Jamie Wiskovsky. And, we mentioned this, there's no Jamie Wiskovsky, there's no Evan Schick, and Jack McCarthy. None of the guys you had those last few years. There's no Logan Driscoll. There's no MLB level player that's in that Bruins line. No Kenny Towns. No all-time, they graduated an all-time great Lake Braddock hitter. And, this year, I think the Bruins kind of felt that they weren't going to have that. I feel like there's a sense that, that they knew that coming into the season. And they knew that there was going to be some struggles. Matt Shabe. Yeah, Matt Shabe is good. We'll get to him. And so we are going to say that Lake Braddock was going to be in a struggle this year. And that's what we've seen throughout this regular season. Again, the offense didn't come through that Fairfax game. Ryan Hartle was on a Mount Fairfax. He was been one of the better pitchers in the district this year. Quite good. He probably is a candidate for first team all district. He's fired some very good outings this year. One of the better two-way players as well. Very good at the plate. And the Bruins just ended up not hitting again that game, and they ended up not coming big again. And of course, the Bruins have also missed that hitter. Hitters like Jamie Wiskovsky, that's the type of hitter that would allow them to get around those top-end pitchers. One of those West Springfield pitchers, Miles Thompson, Aaron Dirks, or Ryan Hartle at Fairfax. They were, they actually, I think, nabbed Ryan Hartle for a few runs when they faced him last year with Jamie Wiskovsky still in the lineup. So you had that going on for the Bruins. Do you think Bradley will? Hey, he is still recovering from his injury, so I don't think he would be available realistically. But yeah, I think he throws 90. Yes, I do know that. And like I said, this season, he is a very good player, and I think he would be a big part of the Bruins staff this season if they had him. The Bruins, I think, would be doing a lot better. Also very good at the plate, too. Got some home run pop. Could definitely see him maybe becoming a first base candidate next year after Dom Quadros graduates. So just pointing back real quick. Anyway, so thank you so much again for the comments, Skittles. But you do have, again, they don't have the top end bat this year. They allow them to get over some of those good pitchers. So that's what made them make the state tournaments, 5-6 seasons in a row, except 2020, which was a COVID year. So you have that. Not Skills. Do you think George's bomb was a fluke on the short field? It's out to left field. Now, I didn't really see the home run, but I didn't really see how far it traveled. But George, yes, he did homer in that Westfield game. But yeah, I think it went, kind of far. I didn't really see it, but, George's got good power. So I'm assuming it went pretty far. It was pretty hot out there that afternoon in terms of temperature. So I'm pretty sure it went far. Anyway, so you do have a lot of, there was a lot of tension, of course, after senior night. And in fact, that they lost at home again this season. That's something we've seen more from the Bruins. Again, 2 back-to-back shutouts at homes to Woodson and Fairfax. A very bad Woodson team and a Fairfax team who overall isn't the best team. They have Ryan Hartle, who can definitely keep them in games, pitch some really good games against some very good teams, most certainly. But again, the Bruins have not still found a way to really hit a lot of that top-end pitching this year. And then again, that will bring us into this Westfield game. Now, of course, Westfield game, you were kind of wondering, okay, this is a game, that doesn't really matter in terms of district. We already got through all the district games after the Fairfax Senior Night game. So you were hoping maybe that this was the point where Lake, where maybe you'd see the Bruins, okay, they're maybe a little lax, and maybe you would see something good happen. You were kind of concerned about the offense. And so now they went out and proved everyone wrong on that Saturday about, they finally broke out offensively for the first time in quite a while. They bashed Westfield 11-0. And of course, with Skittles in the comments mentioning the 2 home runs, of course, Evan George hit a home run, but 2 home runs by Matt Shabe, 3 home runs, I beg your pardon. Again, and, that's big. Of course, the Bruins got a lot of fun. Of course, you got to see some river good pitching from some very young guns coming up. Cody Blaylock, Hudson Drum, who pitched some very, very good innings from. Really like what I've seen from both of them this year, especially Hudson Drum. Shout out to Hudson Drum. Of course, Jake Drum's younger brother. He's flashed some really good stuff this year, and I think he has ace potential, so really watch out for him. Maybe he's someone you see step up in the pitching staff this postseason, but the offense went out there and did their thing. And this has also been a season where the Bruins have lacked a lot of power. You've seen more contact-oriented approaches at the plate, and I think maybe that's why I struggle. Maybe they struggled in a bit of the games this year is because they have not had as much power. Maybe that's affected kind of a complexion of a lineup. Maybe that's affected the hitters in some way. They've had more juice in that lineup, but and hasn't really shown this year. But you're looking at hopefully that offense momentum carry them to that postseason with those home runs, the 2 from Shabe. The first of those 2, of course, is first varsity home run. Congratulations to Matt Shabe. Evan George, who had the only Bruins home run coming into that game, was back in opening day, March 18th against South County. He homered for a second time. And the Bruins went off 11-0. I do want to bring up another point that I was thinking about coming into the show. So the Bruins, we mentioned earlier how they've lacked the top end heavy bats that help them hit good pitching. Well, one of this year has also had struggles hitting some worse pitching. We've seen them lose to Edison. We've seen them lose to Woodson. Woodson shut him out. Edison only allowed 1 run against them through 7 innings. And those were games where they pretty much had the best lines that they could have. Woodson game, Ryan Harding was not in there. But again, that should have still been a good enough lineup to hit any Woodson pitcher. Thank you again, Will. And so, with that being said, you were kind of wondering, this offense. And I'll tell you, this offense, it's going to be hit or miss. The main part of this team is going to be pitching, which leads us into the next segment here on the Adam Hazara Show. It will be, of course, we're going to get to the postseason talk. So the expectations, expect this going into the postseason. So the main point of this Bruins team that is going to do well is the pitching. Bo Patrick, Jack Cavallero are going to do well. Will DeLoma, you're hoping off that great outing he had against West Potomac last week. That's going to turn into some good things. You're hoping that, postseason, it's a new season. You're hoping he's going to turn a new leaf. And you're hoping that he's going to pitch well once again. And he's going to become another good pitcher that they can use. Andrew Laskowski, the sophomore, Jamie Laskowski's younger brother, has been very good in late innings this year. He's gotten the Bruins out of some big situations and high leverage. You really like, a lot of people like what he's been doing. I've liked what he's been doing this year. The main thing, again, for Bruins is going to be his offense. Again, it's going to be hit or miss. They can't, there's some game, a lot of games, especially in the second half, they showed that they've had trouble scoring some runs. There's been some games where they've gotten lucky. Also, the defense has not been, I don't think, where it's been in the last few years. Again, a lot of new lineup. Again, but the team is very younger, but you're hoping if they've had enough experience at this point, now they're coming into the postseason, they have 1 full regular season of experience that they're going into turn into something new. And like Derek Jeter always says, it's not about who has the best record. It's about who gets hottest in the postseason. That's going to win it all. Now, do I think the Bruins are equipped for a state championship? Do I think they're on McLean's level? Do I think they're on Battlefield's level? With all the Virginia Tech commits that they have, do I think they're on, really good Gainesville team down in Prince William Wells level? No, I don't think so. But I think for Bruins, there is a slim chance that they could make states. I feel like if the offense does well enough, if everyone clicks, the offense does have potential to have some good hitters. It's just that everyone needs to perform. Dom Quadros needs to perform. Hopefully Evan George and Matt Shaver out of Bear slumps with their performance on that Saturday game versus Westfield. Evan Chambers continues to hit. Braden Gibson was doing really well in the second half. You're hoping he carries that into postseason. CJ Prentice will continue to hit well. Just everyone you could name that lineup. You're hoping Ryan Harding is back. You're hoping Oliver Crandall can start hitting. You're hoping that a lot of, those Bruins hitters are going to do very well. And so that is going to, hopefully step up. They are going to step up and do their best. But pitching is going to keep them in games. Again, it's a question if that offense can do well. A lot of pressure on that offense to really see if they can actually hit. And so that brings us into the first matchup that they possibly have. It's going to be either Robinson or West Potomac facing. That game is going to be played tonight. See if I can get a score for you guys. We'll play one of those games in the district finals on Thursday. And so you hope that there will be, you hope that it's going to be Robinson, of course, due to the fact that Robinson is the much worse team. They're having a pretty bad season. And of course, West Potomac has been good fair pitch. Now, a good thing is, I hear most likely Austin Dean is pitching tonight, the West Potomac ace, who's a Virginia Tech commit. So most likely you're probably not going to see him pitching that much tonight. Or I should say the next game. Right now, the game is tied 1-1. It is the bottom of third. West Potomac has runners at second and third after a Jeremy Folk sack bunt. So it's second and third, 2 out now. We'll keep an eye on that game, of course. Barrett Baker is actually pitching. Beg your pardon. He's actually starting for West Potomac, so we're probably going to be sitting Dean for that Lake Braddock game. Not sure who Robinson is pitching, but of course, the West Potomac has pitched well against the Bruins. This year we have some good high numbers like Baker, Austin Dean. As we mentioned, William Cardman, the Catholic commit, is also very good. So you have that going on for them. Robinson has a very much younger team this year. The problem with them, they have a very low-level pitching staff. So you're really hoping that they face them, who had a ton of losses. I believe they've lost the first 13, 14 games this season. So you're hoping that Robinson will be the opponent that Lake Braddock faces. West Potomac, that game will be probably pretty close. And so again, not sure who the Bruins will be facing in the district semis round, but again, West Springfield, Alexander City. They're probably going to be saving Bo Padgett for that district semifinal game. Now, I did hear that for the district quarterfinal game on Thursday, that it was going to be dependent on who wins that Robinson-West Potomac game tonight. And so if it's probably West Potomac, you're probably going to see. Now, it's not going to be Bo Padgett pitching again. He's probably going to be district semis against Alexander City or West Springfield, whoever 1 and 2 seeds. I'm not sure which one the Bruins will be facing if they win Thursday. You guys want to put it in the comments, please help me out there. And then they do have Jack Cavalario or Leo Lomo. I would assume since Jack Cavalario has been the more consistent one, he would be getting the start on Thursday versus West Potomac. Maybe you'll see Leo Lomo if it's the weaker Robinson team. But yeah, you probably more likely see Bo Padgett not pitching versus the Rams or the Wolverines in that district quarterfinal round. And then going into the so that's what they got going on there. So we're about 26 minutes in the show now. Of course, if you guys want to leave questions down in the comments, be sure to below. So that being said, we will transition into our Lake Braddock softball segment of the night. Of course, the Lady Bruins over up on a hill, Lake Braddock. They finish again off another good regular season. 15-5 they finished. Not as much to say about their week. They were in a pretty easy stretch of facing some bad Patriot District teams. They handled them well last week. They handled a West Potomac team and Fairfax team that's really not that good. Of course, they got their job done, and they are the 2 seed coming into the district tournament. Of course, they're not playing for another 8 days until next Tuesday, since they have that double bye. And so maybe, we'll kind of get into, the main points for a Bruin softball team in this postseason. So, of course, now I'm not sure who would they be facing next week. We'll probably know more towards the end of the week, but, we will talk about it again. We'll kind of, who did well this season. Of course, they had another really great season. Mackenzie Verdejo at the helm, and both sides pitching and hitting. Of course, again, all the other one pieces, Addison Ford, Rada Samuel, Haley Hackbarth, have been doing well. The players you expect to do well that did well last year. May Bruin has had a breakout year. She's been kind of their player this year. And then, so those parts are good. And I'd say lineup-wise, 1 through 5, with those 5 players, they're pretty good looking over there with the offense. And so the part that I would say, though, is a main concern is trying to find consistency 6 through 9, which we have not seen a lot this year. So with that being said, we've had, you have Eva Dubreuil, who's been hitting around that 6th spot. She was at a high point around middle of the season, second half. She's been in a bit of a slump, though. You're hoping she gets out of that again. Postseason, it's a new season, like we said in the baseball segment of the show tonight. Isabel Sevier, Olivia Federico has been some of their better players who've put up better numbers in some sample size this year in some starts. You're probably expecting them to start more in the postseason. Can they continue to hit at the rate they're doing? And then, both sophomores. And then, of course, you have, they've had a kind of revolving door out there in left field. Sarah Allen has been out there. Lauren has been out there some games. And so I know Lauren Allen, who's had pretty much a full year of under experience her belt after starting last year, a lot of games. She's been starting a lot more. So, that probably those 3, the latter, you're probably going to see more so in a lineup. There's been revolving doors in a few places here. Second base, we've seen not only Federico, but Caitlin Vaught. You've seen Marissa Trejo Lemus, who's been a bubble player between JV and varsity, get some games at both levels this year. And so, you have that going on. So, again, the lineup consistency, if a bottom portion of that, again, that's been a focal point of the team all season, is if they can get that bottom lineup consistency, and if it can translate well and help them win a lot of games. Now, I think in the games mostly it has done well. Again, though, the district is really subpar this year. It's down from a lot of seasons. I know Coach Clauso on 643 said before the season that the district is really competitive top to bottom. Now, again, you do have teams like Alexandria City, Fairfax, Woodson, who really haven't been good, a lot of years. But, last couple of years, Robinson and West Potomac have had some very good teams that have been in the mix as well at times. Now, they're not as good this year. They've definitely lost some significant talent after last year. Robinson is a lot younger this year. West Potomac and lost a lot of their lineup, but they lost their, one of their main, they lost their main pitcher, Katie Demmel last year. They lost their D1 for a baseman after last year, Kate Hardy. So, they had a lot of adjustments this year, but they do have one of the better offenses. And so, but they're still down this year. West Springfield is still, they've been really good this year. They were expected really good. They're always up there. Again, Lake Braddock, South County, there's been talks about them, being a competitor. They've shown, at times this year they can do well. And, in terms of the whole district landscape, there's only really 2 teams in the district and the entire Occoquan region that are really a threat, I would say. Especially, if it's Lake Braddock, West Springfield, it's only 1, and it's going to be those 2 teams to one another. Lake Braddock to West Springfield, and West Springfield to Lake Braddock, of course. And besides that, I really would not say anyone doesn't really come on that level of putting up a big fight. Maybe South County on a good day. You got to give credit to their offense, even though it isn't as top heavy as it has been in the past with D1 commits. They don't have one D1 commit this year. but it is still a very good lineup over there. Again, I think the pitching inconsistencies have still haunted them this year. So that, I think, has been a continuous issue that they've had in some games this year, especially against better opponents. Now, I know, again, their pitching has done better in some games. Like, they played a West Springfield game back on April 29th. That was pretty good. I believe South County won that like 8-2. I know a lot of those runs for South County came on errors, but that West Springfield made. But again, I believe Matty Grice was able to keep him in that game. And of course, again, you kind of thinking over there, the situation over there was that Matty Grice was going to be their ace coming into the season, but she went through some a lot of midseason struggles, and so it was kind of her, Julia Niner, that they were pitching, as well. Of course, Niner is back in the team this year again, but I feel like on a good day, maybe you'll get a good outing from Matty Grice against a good team, but again, there's still, I believe, a lot of question marks, in my opinion, around her and how much she can carry that Stallions team and trying to face other opponents. With West Springfield, you mentioned, let's just, again, tail back to Lake Braddock real quick, actually. You mentioned with Lake Braddock, of course, Mackenzie Verdejo has been, still very consistent this year in majority of her games. West Springfield, of course, Lake Braddock has still been up there very much so in a lot of games, especially against better opponents, in terms of the conversation that they have with those teams, and those matchups. And then with, team like West Springfield, of course, you had Elena Promozic, of course, she, had a down season after being really good in her freshman year. She still, she had a bit of a down season last year, but she showed that she can still pitch very well this season, especially against Lake Braddock the last time. So she could kind of have I could definitely see her having Katie Demel or Relis or last year, like she did with West Potomac, pretty much inconsistent with her whole regular season after being once a great pitcher and then coming into the district playoffs and then, returning to rural form, and Promozic has still gotten that. And of course, the Spartans not only have Promozic, she's consistent, they also do have a really good freshman, Andrea Yagoy, as well as that really potent lineup over there, with Promozic, players like Alexa Harvey, Kate Mindorf, Meredith Mossford, Layla Mutin, Natalie Coughlin. That's a very potent offense over there, 1 through 9. In my opinion, they probably have the most balanced lineup in the entire district and in the region as well. Now, in terms of a region, you probably don't really have to worry about national district. None of the national district teams are really ever a problem. They don't really seem to be a problem this year. Oh, CJ Prentice in the chat for Lake Braddock. Welcome, CJ Prentice, a Bruins DH. Welcome, and catcher, welcome to the show. What about that baseball team? Yep, we talked about the baseball team earlier. Of course, thank you so much again for your Prentice. Of course, we did talk some Lake Braddock postseason baseball action earlier, so make sure you guys, after this show, or if you guys want to go back earlier in the stream and watch that, but we are currently covering the softball segment of the show right now. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Chat has been more active today, so again, appreciate you guys' support. But anyway, there has been some who we expecting to pop off hitting those answers. You can find earlier on in the show. Of course, don't want to spoil it for you, but yeah, we got some good baseball talk again earlier. So with Lake Braddock softball, again, I feel like, again, they're still up there, and West Springfield is definitely going to be the team to beat to them. Of course, West Springfield already beat Lake Braddock twice this year. And, they're probably out of all the teams in the district, they're probably the ones who've hit Mackenzie Verdejo the best. I feel like, maybe, Robinson, Mackenzie's freshman year, they had a really good line. They kind of hit her well. But, Mackenzie really has really pitched well against them ever since the beginning of her sophomore year. She's been very consistent against them. But I feel like West Springfield, though, they've kind of they've probably hit her the best. And, even South County with, some lineups that have had a lot of D1 players. Mackenzie has shut them down really well. And so, yeah, I mean, she did have that one player or about one game this year versus Lake Braddock where they did kind of score 6 runs off Verdejo. But outside of that, Mackenzie's pitched really well against the Stallions as a whole in her career. And so with that being said, again, we'll see if the Bruins face again. South County again could be a threat. Not sure if it will be a team facing that district semifinals game. They do now. It is going to be a question, I think. Now that we bring up the. Do you think Cav's hair? What's going on with Cav's hair? I don't think it's going to affect his pitching ability. No, I don't know what that means. But basically with Verdejo and Lake Braddock, pitching against West Springfield. It is, you kind of do. I think there are maybe some people who question, Verdejo can pitch well versus West Springfield. Again, you kind of talk about this stuff is there, and it is, I think more just about execution. If you do notice Verdejo, she's still having a really good year overall. Now, her numbers are down from, her previous seasons. The strikeouts aren't as there, and her ERA is high. Now, it's not high as it's not like 5 or 4 or anything crazy, for her standards. It's still in the 2s, but, her numbers are a bit down than they have been from previous years if you look on Max Preps. But, she's still been very consistent. She's still, the best pitcher in the Patriot District in the Occoquan region. Do you think Leo has been improving? Yeah. He's been definitely getting better with his command. And, definitely, of course, you had about good start versus West Homefield I mentioned earlier. So, you hope he is going in the right direction. Thank you for that question. Yeah, so, I feel like he will I feel like there is definitely some optimism that he will be a factor for Bruins on the pitching side in the postseason, help Cav and Bo Padgett out. So, yeah. And I don't think the thing about him having blonde and weird hair, if that's true, and a hog rider, I don't think that's true. I don't believe in superstitions, so I wouldn't say that's true. Cav is going to be good because I think Cav will be good. Reactions thinks he's going to be okay. But yeah, Cav is good because he's Jack Cavalario. He's just been a very good pitcher for the Bruins this year. I don't think it has anything to do with his hair. He just, I go based off all logic. I'm a logic guy. Yeah, I still feel like, for Lake Braddock softball, Mackenzie Verdejo, again, she's the main pitcher. She's the main player who's going to win them games. And so, I still feel like, she's still, it's still in there. And, but I feel like, there is, I do feel like there is a bit of room to question whether or not she will pitch well versus the Spartans or not. Now, I definitely think she could. She's faced better lineups in the past that she's done really well against. Again, last year was the year where she was striking out hitters left and right. She was striking out, Alexander City. She was striking out Kate Hardy. She struck out Ava Abramovich at South County. How many times can you say that how many times do you say that she's ever struck out in her high school career? And Mackenzie Verdejo is one of the only few pitchers that's been able to strike a power 4 level hitter like her out of the plate. So, Mackenzie has not been doing as much of that this year. But again, the stuff is still there. She's still going to be a really, really good pitcher for the Bruins. So I don't really think there's too much concern around how Verdejo is going to do against West Springfield, of course, who has tagged her for 11 runs in 14 innings this year. Those 11 runs were all earned. But again, I don't think it's anything that, I don't think it's, the stuff is still there. And again, I feel like, she's still, I believe that she still has her stuff. So I definitely wouldn't leave her out any day. She's going to pitch well against anybody. She's still one of the best, better pitchers in the state this year. So most certainly, she's still going to be very good. And do I think Riley should get an AB? Are you referring to Riley Peterson? Okay, please don't ask weird questions. Guys, I understand you want to be hard chat, but please, stop with these, please stop with these really, really, really weird questions. I also feel like having hair is a sport. It just matters how you perform. Yeah. It's just about how you perform. It's not about how you look or anything like that. Yes, I do agree with Will. Reactions there. But yeah, we will see what happens with the Bruins softball team coming up. It should also, one of the final points I want to make here on the show today before we sign off. Lake Braddock in softball should have a pretty easy time getting through majority. Again, the region is really bad. As we said, there's only like two teams at best I see being a threat to them making the state tournament. Those two teams being West Springfield, which is a definite, and maybe there's an argument that the South County Stallions are going to pose a threat to them. So, with that being said, the Bruins, I think there is still a lot of expectations on them to certainly do very well, and, you should expect them to make the district semifinals, even if they do face South County in that game next Tuesday. I think they are favorites. They do have home field advantage. I think, I think the concern with having off so many days is that there is going to be a bit of rust being off, for 12 days straight. I still feel like, though, that, that they'll still do well. I'm pretty sure, they're preparing pretty hard. And so, they kind of know what to expect. And, with whoever they're facing, and they got a game plan for them, whether it is South County or if it would be West Springfield. But West Springfield, if they were to face them, if you're going to be on the other side bracket, what would you do if your friend got kicked out of the fantasy baseball league? What do I think about Evan Chambers? Evan Chambers is a great catcher. He's one of the best hitters in the Bruins this year. He's their leader in on-base percentage and batting average. He's probably one of their best freshmen they've had in quite a while. So that's what I think of him. He's a very, very good freshman. He's probably D1. He has a lot of potential. I really like what I see from Evan Chambers. What I do if my friend got kicked out of a fantasy baseball league, that's an interesting question. I mean, it kind of depends on the context, I mean, if your friend got, kicked out for, because, if it's for an unfair reason, then, I would stand up for them. I would stand up for them for sure. And if it was me, I mean, I'd do the same. Just stand up for myself, and yeah, that's what I would do. I would stand up for them or myself. If it's unfair, or I got kicked out because of cheating. If I were cheating, yeah, sure, you kick them out, don't let them back in. They're they're breaking the rules. So why would you keep them in at that point? Davin, the freshman, called for playoffs. Never heard of that name, Davin. Pretty sure he's good, though. If he is getting called up for postseason, he's going to play a big role for that team. Yeah, we're just going to about sign off here, guys, today. So be sure to leave a like. Be sure to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you do not miss another episode of the show. And make sure you share this with a friend, as always. Thank you guys so much for tuning in the show. We'll see you next time. I have to go. Sorry, the greatest. I have to go. I have other things to attend to. All right, one more question. What's your question? Guys, we'll do we'll do one more round of questions. What do you guys want to ask? Please, nothing weird as well. So I'll stick around for like another minute or two here on the show, but I gotta get going. So, I'm sorry. Who's gonna pop off in the playoffs for us? Is that for baseball or softball? So, because there's two teams there that we've talked about today. So is it the Lake Braddock baseball or Bruins softball? Which one? Baseball. Okay. So, I have confidence that, the players who we've been in slumps, Shabe and, George, after those, the good performance that they had on Saturday, I feel like they're going to pop off, and, Braden Gibson is going to continue to pop off. There's definitely a lot of options, and, certainly there's a lot of hitters, you could say are going to, pop off. I definitely think, Dom Quadros, who has a lot of experience, 5-time regional player of the year back in 98. If you could only win the regional playoffs or regional player of the year once. You know, and you're only in high school 4 years. I had to do senior year twice. Okay, that's interesting. So, congratulations. We like my shark tattoo. But yeah. So we're gonna sign off the show today, and thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day.